Раз, два, три, раз, два, три. Ліля, чутно мене? Oh, everybody is hearing me. Yeah, and I also have a signal that people hear us and see us. As you see, we're in BRAINEFFECT Flow State Labs studio. People just took cold plunges, did some red light therapy, and guys, we are excited to have you here. And we will be streaming today stress anxiety management speaker event from Liv Longevity Community. See you soon. We start in a few minutes. Oh God.
No worries. No, I just just slow the slides. That would be one. But people commit that is like practice. So
Was someone introduced our second speaker?
Insights understanding why things happen. I'm pretty flexible. You want to start? Because I can then kind of, because I have 100 of different possibilities I can go to.
Maybe my advice.
Good.
So guys, in a minute we're gonna start. So take your seats, feel comfortable, relaxed. It's gonna be interesting. Okay. Welcome to today's event by Liv Longevity Community. We're on the mission actually to make healthy aging approachable for all science staff. And a year ago with Amr, this is a bearded black guy in the glasses. He's usually here, but not today. We started gathering people who are interested in the topic, who can share, who can learn, and actually who can teach. Every time I come to this event, I learn, even though I did a PhD in molecular biology of aging. And our community is 1 year old. We expanded it to the Hamburg, Munich, Frankfurt, and first place was Berlin. We have monthly events, speaker events. We experiment with a format which suits the best for our busy, stressful, anxiety-full lives. And if you want to know what is the next event, please, you can get into our WhatsApp group. We are also on the Meetup, but we are moving from Meetup to WhatsApp. You are very much welcome to use your digital smart gadgets. And I would like to say thank you to John and Flow State Labs, which is a concept studio of BRAINEFFECT. John, your stage.
Okay, so many of you I have met before. Just so everybody knows, this is Flow State Labs, and this is also the reception to BRAINEFFECT. And these are the BRAINEFFECT labs where we actually develop all the products that you see over here. And BRAINEFFECT creates mind nutrition, and I will let Julia talk a little bit more about that later on. But I'm very happy to have everyone here. And right now we have our ice baths, we have red light therapy, we have compression boots, and we're always looking to add new biohacking and analysis systems for people to really understand themselves and what's going on with their life, and to help with longevity, help with like a better quality of life all the way around.
Yeah, and today we have two amazing speakers. who will talk about stress, anxiety, and science behind it, and how we can manage stress, and how we can even measure it and prevent it. Who am I? I told you that I did PhD in biology, but actually I'm also a scientific co-founder of a Berlin-based longevity startup, which is called Liv Longevity Labs. With this company, as I said, we're trying to make complex science, longevity science, accessible, understandable, reachable by people. And for that, we created a product which measures your biological age, actually gives you different ages of different organ system based on your epigenetics. Epigenetics, this is something that we can change with our lifestyle, everyday choices, and good habits. But we also integrate wearable data and some heart rate related data, crunch it, and give you longevity, long-term health insights in our app. We are very early stage. If you want, you can become our early access customer. So this is our community. But if somebody is interested to try the app, it's iOS app. You also can measure biological age with us. So please approach either me or just hit me on WhatsApp group. And with this, I would like to start our speaker event. So our first speaker, his name is Wolf. Florian Wolf. Florian Wolf. He is the CEO of YourPrevention company. It's a company which measures stress and helps you with stress, but Wolf will tell you more. And our second speaker is Julia, and she will talk about adaptogens. This is very fancy supplement molecules which target your brain and make you less stressed. So with this, welcome on the stage, Florian. I'm so sorry, but I like your surname.
No worries. By the way, when you read Flo from the backside, that's Wolf. That's my back name, the last name. And if you start from the beginning, it's Flo, which is the short version of Florian. So it's all Flo. It's all the Flo. That's all my thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just go here.
I need to stand here, right?
You can deviate here, but just remember.
For the digital community out there.
Also have
Hi to everyone. Hi everyone. Great you're here. Two more sentences about myself. I started in 2001, together with my father, who's a medical professor, fascinated to prevent the most frequent diseases. At that time, it was called anti-aging. I tell you what, a lot of these things we knew there are still latest shit today. It's like that. There's a lot of science till then, that's true, but a lot of basics, also I want to introduce you today, is pretty well known. And the biggest challenge that we're also in is, how can we bring things into everyday life? You all know a lot of things. And we've reached out to more than 45,000 people for now. We're doing projects in large companies. I work one-on-one with executives. I work with pupils. I work with the young generation, all people from society. But one thing is pretty clear. Knowledge doesn't change the things. So today I want to give you a little bit insight into the human brain, but how can you bring things into change, which is absolutely the crucial thing. So one thing that I love is, and as it was also, today a little bit about stress and also anxiety, you could extend it to nervousness, to anger, to sadness. There's a lot of emotions that are occurring due to chronic stress. But one thing is pretty clear. Emotions produce molecules, and molecules produce emotions. It both interacts with each other. So you cannot just say, I don't want to be angry anymore, or you can take things to reduce the emotions. It's always one. We call that biopsychosocial. So the latest science includes biology, includes physiological marker, but it includes also your being. Who are you? What do you want to do? What life phase are you? So it needs to be inter-individual. It's a very individual approach. Now, not too much of data, but one thing is also very clear. So many people suffer from mental diseases, and there is not just the ones that are sick or suffering. There's a big gray zone of people that are before that. They have symptoms. And We know today that there is no health without mental health. We know that stress is a huge impact for cardiovascular disease. Did you know? The big Interheart study, 15,000 people having had a cardiac infarction were examined, and they found out, and that's the Interheart study is huge and it's international, that 30% of the acute heart infarctions were due to chronic stress. If you go to a cardiologist today, they would never ask you about your stress level. Well, never doesn't mean there's a few that do, but most of the classical cardiological screenings, they look into insides of your heart. I do that regularly because I do endurance sports, so I really do really a lot of examinations on that. But you need to understand also your psychosocial state. There's data from McKinsey. 1 out of 4 employees worldwide suffers from burnout symptoms. We do big surveys in companies. It's even worse than that. And I have a student course in Switzerland, aged 20 to 29 roughly. More than 30% of the young ones have at least one significant change. I don't want to call it necessarily disease in terms of mental health. So that is a burden that is still increasing. You all know about that, but let's go a little bit more into the practical side. One major symptom, and that's the take-home message number 1 today. One of the major symptoms or the early signs of mental health is exhaustion. Exhaustion is not just a symptom, it is a factor of vulnerability. If you party last night, you're exhausted, okay. That's because we had a late and too heavy dinner yesterday, but that was a conscious decision. But then we had a bad sleep, probably you're not that fit the next day. But if this is chronic, if you go to bed and you sleep 8 hours, you were yawning. This is exactly what I mean. It's like, oh, I'm so tired. No, sorry, I'm kidding. When you sleep 8 hours and you wake up in the morning and you don't feel recovered, which we call the non-regenerative sleep, these are all signs that the body is no more in its equilibrium. So exhaustion and chronic tiredness is an early sign, and we have made a lot of research, a lot of science around this biopsychosocial testing of stress. I will just briefly introduce you to the markers also. But the people that were exhausted, the people that they weren't able to adequately recover had way higher ratio of mental diseases later on. Now, a little bit of basics. We are able to upregulate quickly if there is any challenge in our life. But the human biology was produced to downregulate afterwards, right? So you have an impact and then you relax again. Now, what the group of McEwen, this is a US research group, I love this group because that's the most holistic group working internationally. Because, you know, there's a lot of research groups just in neurobiology, there's a few just in psychological aspects. But the biopsychosocial part is heavy because you need to understand what is the interaction of human behavior, the brain, all the physiology, and all the other things that we can measure. Now, what they found out is that if you have this chronic stress exposure, which is pretty much our life, it doesn't matter what that is, right? It can be family, it can be the job, it can be anything. What do? We tend to be always on. Because there's always something that's happening. Just look in your weekends. What do? You don't relax. You do this, you do that, you go out. Holidays, some people do, but most of the people, they do a lot of activities, which is not bad, but it's kind of an addiction to kind of feed the brain. Now, this always on, the consequence is that we upregulate. And upregulation is biological. We have substances, cortisol, we have noradrenaline, dopamine, we have a downregulation of serotonin. The body kind of provides the energy to maintain this pace. Pretty logic, right? But besides the upregulation, there's also the downregulation because you cannot maintain this for a longer time. Unfortunately, there's not this endless power within us where we can do that for all of our life. Some people can do. There's genetics. We know that from resilience research. Some people can do a lot of stuff over the life without really burning out. But that's 1 or 2 out of 10. Now, after that, or even before, we have also the downregulation. So the system, we call that stress habituation. The system gets used to it, but the system is clever. It says, hey, all the substances that I need for this upregulation is toxic. I downregulate it. So I keep easy, right? Cortisol is downregulated, noradrenaline is downregulated, and the system is kind of in a very kind of downregulated and easy way. By the way, this is interesting. This is endogenous cannabinoids, endogenous opioids, and endogenous morphines. We have these substances within us. It's all intrinsically a regulation mechanism where all these substances are kind of flushed out, and that's how the system downregulates. And that's what happens. This is a stress response. And that's why we're exhausted then. Now, let's put a little bit hard numbers behind that. Now, on the one side, it's all about balance at the end. Now, on one side, we have the excitation, which is associated mostly. There is way more substances we can measure. We have a lab. We measure 250 markers. But that's the most evident ones in the first phase. We have noradrenaline, we have dopamine, and we have cortisol. They all give us energy. They give us drive. They give us cognition or cognitive function. They give us courage. There are a lot of positive side effects. But if we keep on being on this side, we become vulnerable. Vulnerable not just to mental diseases, also to all other diseases. And on the other side, we have the inhibition, which is mostly associated with serotonin and GABA, which is for regeneration, for being at ease, for inner calm, and so on. By the way, later on, if you want the slides, you may ask Elena. I provide the slides on a PDF. Yes, you don't have to. If some people are interested, kind of look at it, and there's more details in that. Now, this up and down regulation, the on and off and the always on, we can easily measure with a lot of devices. There's really a lot of devices on the market. We were probably the first ones in Germany measuring heart rate variability in a longer period of time. So we started 2006. Super technically impossible, but we did it with, breast belts and so on. Some of you are aware of that. But the only thing, I don't want to go into details about, the devices, but it's about understanding, is the regeneration, especially at night, enough to fulfill the resources or not? But what we have found out in our research is even if you sleep good and you overdo during the day, you still have a higher risk for mental diseases. So the always on during the day, if you never pause, if you run like fast from early morning to late night, and even if you still sleep good, you have a higher risk for vulnerability. And the balance in between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branch is one of the most important things that we do track, not just because it's fancy, because it gives us these insights on a real hard data level, if the body, and that's super individual, if the body is able to adequately compensate or not. And as you can see, the upregulation goes like up and up and up, and there's a certain threshold where this maladaptation cannot be maintained, and then the system downregulates. But even here, in this phase, this is where you feel a lot of power. You can do a lot of things. You can work hard. You can even you go out in the evening. But when you have a moment of rest, and someone tells you, hey, sit still, relax, you would say like, no, I can't. It's like, hey, what do we do? The system starts to kind of have so much energy that you're just unable to really calm down. And I want to explain to you why. Now, another view on the always on, as you can see here, that's one example out of a few thousands. As I said, we've measured so much, but that is pretty common. You have a day nonstop. You see, this is a management day, meeting, workplace, lunch meeting, travel, and so on. But it can be anything. It can be children. It can be no matter what stresses you have. But it's a high energy consuming profile. Now, what is the body doing? As I mentioned, it upregulates cortisol. Now, this is the example cortisol. It can also be noradrenaline, but for the cortisol, it's pretty nice because it has that kind of very close connection with anxiety. Now, if cortisol levels are upregulated, we measure this 3 times, 8, 2 p.m., 8 p.m. in saliva, super easy, but the most evident test to see these adaptations, the upregulated cortisol gives you the energy. It's the hormone of energy. Now, having these levels allows you to do a lot of things, but the side effects on the behavior, thinking, feeling, and acting is we become restless. We're unable to relax. Whom of you has ever had that? You've had 2 weeks of holidays, but it took you at least a week to calm down. Raise your hands. Who has ever experienced that? Most of the people, I guess. So you are there, the most beautiful places, and it's like, hey, where am I? What's happening? You're so kind of late in the system, be able to slow down. But one thing is evidently also clear in science, that the hypercortisolism, which is at least 2 values of 3 are upregulated over the normal values, are associated with depression, are associated with anxiety, and they're associated with cardiovascular risk, what I mentioned before. A few fathers of friends of my daughters, we had just 3 or 4 in the last years, fathers that died with end 40, beginning of 50, even very sportive because of acute heart infarction. And you would never have thought that those people would have any problems with their heart. They didn't have. But they were in obvious, very stressful conditions. And there's a lot of other things that I love is we lose the focus. We lose the ability to be present, to perceive, and we are very much on autopilot. And I love this link because biopsychosocial means when the biology changes, it explains the way we act, the way we think, and the way we feel. So whenever people measure that, I just had a very, very difficult, heavy case yesterday, a 29-year-old young boy, young because 29-year-old life is just full ahead of him. High levels of anxiety, highly upregulated cortisol levels. And what did he say? He said, listen, Florian, it's amazing. That's the first time that I understand why I am the way I am, because he's suffering for years. And we do not measure this just to identify it. You can easily intervene because you can downregulate without pharmacological intervention. For all the testings in these brain and neurotransmitters or the cortisol, you can down and upregulate with bioidentical substances and nutraceuticals to bring the system into balance. This is not very sustainable, but it's the game-changing effect to bring people into behavioral changes. If you tell him or her, hey, relax, make a break, sleep good, they would say, hey, I knew that before, but it doesn't work out. I can't. And even anxiety, hey, don't be anxious. Life is good. We're safe here. Hey, this doesn't work. So again, it's about how can you bring people into change? It's about balancing neurobiology. Just to finish that, cortisol can also downregulate. That's the typical day fatigue. That's the people in the morning, they still jump out of bed, they go into their work, they do all the things they need to do, but around noon it's like, oh, I'm so tired. And also the fully downregulated cortisol, which is the hypocortisolism, is associated with full exhaustion. So if you tell those people, hey, do some sports, go for ice bathing, whatever, they would say, okay, I understand the logic that it would work, but I can't. I have no energy. How would I do that? So the upregulation and the downregulation is avoiding us for bringing things into everyday life. Again, this is also the experience we've had. We've had a large project with a Swiss bank, 8,000 employees. It was a mindfulness project. And it was not just a lecture. It was a consequent workshop series where we've reached out a few thousands of people. What we have learned is 10% were fully into it. But that's the one that were doing yoga, that were doing already a lot of healthy stuff, and they were fully engaged. But the ones that needed it, obviously, they said, wow, it's fantastic. I love what you were saying. They came back home and it's like, no way to change anything. Now, if we want to reach out to people, we need to take into consideration, if you're not in a changing mode, which is roughly 50%, 60% of the people, because 30% is in the red zone, definitely red. 30% is roughly somewhere in the middle, where it's difficult to change, and the other 30% only is able to really bring things into change. And there's a few lucky guys of you that have a high self steering or how would you say that? It's not the drive, it's the harshness. You can kind of control yourself. You keep on telling yourself you need to do that and it needs to be done. That's just 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10. That's the ones who do endurance sports, for example, like triathlon or long endurance running, or they can do that. If this is healthy, it's another thing. But keep in mind, biology is the strongest driver for the switching off. Now, the switching off has two, in my opinion, two important simple components. One is switching off the body, which is the activation of the parasympathetic nerve system, which needs to be fully on at night for sure, but also during the day, little breaks, micro-pausing. So you need to learn or train the system on, off, on, off, on, off. If you keep on doing always on, you have the button to switch off, but it doesn't work. You sit and the system is still upregulated. And the second thing is switching off the mind. And switching off the mind, I have one little exercise with you. I'm sure you're familiar with some of these exercises, but if you're not, it's one exercise that works the best, especially for those who are new to this. I would just tell you about this in a minute. But the switching off is the essence of what we need to do, also in terms of, and this is now the bridge to longevity. If you want to control the consequences of chronic stress, we need to train our system holistically to switch off and not to do more. That is pretty clear. And more is something that's happening in everyday life. The speed, the complexity, the insecurity. Brain-wise, we know that this is a burden. And insecurity doesn't mean, there's something right here, right now. It's just something even you can't describe. And especially if you look into the young generations, it is definitely there. And there's very nice literature about insecurity and the human brain. Now, the first step is we need to objectify stress. Measure heart data, which is today's standard is heart rate variability. If you measure this with wrist computers, it should be over a longer period of time because it's not that kind of stable. We're testing everything that is on the market for years. I love the recorder because it's 1000 hertz. It's ECG quality, so you have the very best signal that you can have. The biology, the lab testing, which is the most evident test you can have, also for the serotonin and for the neurotransmitter. It's super easy and it's not even very expensive. And the third thing is you should use very good psychosocial questionnaire to understand your traits. Why trait? Well, we ask for state and trait. Let me explain that quickly so it's a little bit more clear. State asks for how do you feel right now. So it's very complex questionnaire that are very valid, that understand what is your current health situation psychosocially. But the trait is also interesting because it's a personality type. So what are the typical drivers that cause vulnerability? So you can be super healthy. So I have a lot of, also people that are in good shape, they are happy, they are energetic, and they sleep well, but they have certain imprints that could cause, in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, could cause probably some major stress issues. And then you would say, hey, listen, I have seen you're perfectionist slightly, or you have difficulties to say no, you have a slight overcommitment. So if you do things, you're fully into it, which is super because you love what you do. But the thing is, you mostly like to overdo, and then it's difficult to switch off. So these both should be asked for. So, and then if you measure, it's not for just knowing it, it's for understanding. If you have difficulties to bring things into change, it's about first bringing the biology in equilibrium. Without that, again, it is trial and error. Same with weight loss. Best example. And that's why people don't understand that also the overeating is mostly a consequence, unless it's not a disease in metabolism. It is an overeating is a stress compensatory mechanism. And if you don't work on the stress levels, it will always be difficult for you if you come back into stress phase to control eating. But it's the same with anger. It's the same with anxiety. So be aware. Balancing neurobiology is the first step. The second step is focus everything on regeneration. If you want to be stable on your own feet, take care that your system is able to adequately regenerate in terms of your mind, letting go of thoughts. That's mostly the mindfulness practice where you can allow yourself to be in a focus on any body sensation and you can let go of thoughts. One explanation here, I'm pretty sure you've heard of that. We have two networks in the brain. One is creating thoughts and one is perception. But you can only have one network working at a time. So the moment you focus on one thing and you come into perception, you cannot think. That's the easy explanation of how mindfulness works. So if you have a lot of worries, a lot of thoughts, a lot of anxiety, it is about learning techniques with a balanced biology where you can allow yourself to switch off your mind, even if it's just for a minute, which is super, super sustainable because you allow yourself also to understand it's just in my head. It's mostly no relevant threat that I have in my mind. Then what I mean with that, the mindfulness self, there's thousands of possibilities to go into that. As I said, we made huge projects with mindfulness in Switzerland and have seen that it doesn't matter how you approach it. The major key about the mindfulness aspect is regularity. Even if it's just a minute a day, and we started there with 2 minutes a day, if you do this in a long-term perspective, this is how you definitely come into change mode. And then the last thing is the behavioral changes. If you start with that, you're going to fail. Because if these things are not evidently there, you don't even perceive what is important for you. If people tell you need to change your nutrition, it's them. So I have never told anyone ever in my lectures for the past 25 years what I do, because it's so inter-individual. But the mindfulness aspect is, hey, perceive. Where are you right now? What is important for you? What are your goals? Where do you want to go? It's all there. But then you can find out what it is. So I have a lot of overweight people. You can imagine I work with management, so a lot of people BMI over 30. I have very often I tell them, hey, weight loss is not your problem right now. Later on, probably, for sure, it's healthy to lose weight, yes, but it will not be possible if you don't follow this path. It's nearly impossible. Now, biological support, again, it creates the willingness for change. Logic and ratio doesn't change anything. You need to come into experience, and you need to have the energy or the calmness to change things. Promotion of regeneration is the key for me because it's the first step of enabling people to understand to better sleep, but also to let go of thoughts and to understand that chronobiology also means we have rhythms, circadian rhythms throughout the day. We can work from early morning 8 to late night 10. We can work 7 days a week. We can work without holidays. But the question is, what is that doing to us? And in the long term, if we talk about a healthy and happy life, this is so crucial because the speed and the impact that our brain has every day is causing a loss of regeneration. The mindful self, again here, it's about regularity. It's about the little tiny micro breaks throughout the day. And let me give you one more numbers on that. That's our own research project, what I mentioned before. This is an average low RMSSD and SDRR. That's basic valid numbers from heart rate variability, which allow us to see that people have high stress levels throughout the day. Now, what you can see here is that people who had an obvious good sleep, but had significantly higher stress levels throughout the day, have way more anxiety. Look, and they sleep good. So if you tell them, hey, have a good rest at night, they would say, hey, I do that, I'm still anxious. Now, they need definitely breaks throughout the day. They need to interrupt. The best method that we have seen in the few thousands of people that works is the Da Silva method. Anyone ever heard of that? Yeah. It's a book about it as well. Now, the simple thing is, you get the slides, but you can make a photo as well. You count your breaths backwards. It's as simple as that. But if you're new to that and you focus on the breath, it's difficult to follow the breath. If you've experienced, no problem. But counting in numbers from 10 in the beginning, which is way enough. So if your mind keeps on telling you, oh, I do that from 50, you can do that, but you're going to fail. So the more easy it is, the more regularly you do that, you count your breath backwards. And that is a moment where you can definitely kind of switch off the thoughts. And if you can then breathe technically also a little bit in coherence, you can even activate the parasympathetic nerve system, but that would be then the next step. So keep it simple in the beginning. And the last step, as I said, is then the changes in behavior. Because if you have this connection again to yourself, if you understand what is good for you, what you want right now, then you can make conscious lifestyle decisions. And lifestyle doesn't necessarily mean what products you take. It also means, hey, where do I live? What about partnership? What about family? What about my own goals? What do I want to achieve? Where I want to go? Where I work? Things that very often are not pretty clear. I've met so many people, very successful people, and still they are so successful. They are mid-50, and you ask them, "Hey, what is your dreams? What do you love?" It's like, I don't know an answer to that. So sometimes we lose the connection to ourselves, which is mostly the biggest benefit of being more mindful in everyday life. Hey, and I want you, and I love this sentence the most. I want to give you on your way. Speeding up is super. Being energetic is perfect. Working a lot and doing things that you love is just phenomenal if you know how to go slow. You can go fast if you know to go slow. I mean, this is the major rule of life, not the other way around, because if you always speed up, you lose the ability to adequately go slow. Thanks for the attention.
Shall we take questions like joint session in the end? Guys, how do you feel? Or you would like to now? No burning question? No. Okay, let's do the joint one.
The joint one is good. For me, it's perfect. Yeah, cool.
Florian, thanks a lot. I have a burning question, but
good.
It will be after Julia's talk. Thank you to Florian. Very interesting. Now we have a second speaker. Julia is head of product of BRAINEFFECT. She designs all those.
My team.
Your team and supplements. And Julia, about what you will talk today. I will open your slides. And we go. Guess slideshow. Just go down here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's an honor to be here, to be asked to have a presentation. I also felt a little bit of anxiety and stress during the day to perform here, to be honest. It's not my area where I am frequently. But yeah, so let me introduce myself first. So yeah, I did my PhD at the Charité, and I did some research on active plant components and the effect on the gut health. So it was not about stress, it was more about inflammation and how plant components can be protective and help against it. But it was more foundation research, and I wanted to be more in something useful, so I wanted to help people. That's why I changed my field. So I left academic and I joined the industry, product development. And 6 years ago, I joined BRAINEFFECT. Because, yeah, BRAINEFFECT, they also interested, like me, in nutrition, because I'm a nutritionist. And I like to know what I eat, what it does to me. And I'm very interested in health. So I'm happy that I found BRAINEFFECT. And this is our CEO, Fabian Völsch. And he said, so BRAINEFFECT is building a new food category. We call it Mind Nutrition. But this is only since a few years. Before we started more in the biohacking area. So we come from biohacking and like performance. So we wanted to help people to perform at their best. But this is now a little bit more going to the well-being, also stress resilience, and more healthy approach to performance. But still, we have these 4 categories. So what we need to feel good, to perform good, is the area of well-being, where the stress resilience, of course, lays in, and gut health, and then we have the sleep area, and there we started. So we had the first sleep spray on the market with melatonin. And then we have, of course, the energy and the focus. And our mission is, to empower people to fuel their minds and perform at their best and live a healthy life they choose to have, of course. And today, I want to tell you a bit more about adaptogens and longevity. So hacking stress for a healthy and longer life. So I want to give you a tool to hack stress with plant components and be your own biohacker, so to say. And I want to show you also again a bit more about stress. So here you can see, before we start, what adaptogens do. We need to know what stress response looks like. So when there is stress, our brain is like getting some signals, specifically the amygdala is our threat center. So, oh my God, something's happening. And then it sends some signals to the hypothalamus. And hypothalamus then increases the corticotropin releasing hormone you can see there, which is then another signal but in the pituitary gland, which is then producing the sorry, I always am difficult with the words, adrenocorticotrophic hormone. And this then leads in the adrenal gland to release cortisol. And you know, of course, you all know that cortisol is the stress hormone. And this is then, and then it gives a back loop to the hypothalamus. If there is a lot of cortisol, stop production of cortisol, so lower down. If there is low cortisol, then there is a back loop, increase the cortisol production. So this is how it works, and this is our normal response. But like Florian said, if it's too much without recovery in between, we have chronic stress, and this disrupts this whole homeostasis we want to keep. So the hypothalamus may become less sensitive to cortisol, and then the brain thinks it's less cortisol out there, so let's produce more cortisol. And then we have the problem, okay, too much cortisol in our system, and this is, it's then leading to a lot of processes in our body, in our mitochondria, and it leads to inflammation of our nervous system in our brain. So it also makes us fatigue. And due to the serotonin lowering, it's also with depression associated. And it also shortens telomeres in the end. And this can shorten lifespan. So chronic stress is not good for our longevity approach. So we want to improve that. And here comes the stress resilience. So you heard of it. I just want to keep it short to explain it. So stress resilience is your ability to adapt and recover from stress. So it prevents you from long-term damage by chronic stress. And so high resilience means you have lower cortisol and more energy. The stress resilience is individual, but you can strengthen it. So you're not lost there with your genetics. So you have some tools like you already heard. You can be more mindful. You can breathe. You can, of course, train your stress resilience by exercise, by cold exposure, like we do here at BRAINEFFECT, and with breath work. But what also helps is going in the nature, laugh with your friends, and have social support, which is really important. But then, on the other side, where BRAINEFFECT comes into, you also can support stress resilience with nutrition. And you can support it with adaptogens and with sleep and recovery. And also with sleep, you can help, again, with nutrition to improve your sleep. But of course, it's very important to have a good sleep routine and regularity in your sleep schedule. And today, I could talk about all the products. We have omega-3, we have protein, we have melatonin, but I want to tell you more about adaptogens, because adaptogens, when I started at BRAINEFFECT, it was the first time I heard about it, to be honest. So in my study, I had something to do with gut health. Adaptogens were not the thing, but we already had that when I started. And I was really curious, what are these adaptogens? So adaptogens are able to improve the homeostasis of the stress. So the blue line you can see here is the normal stress response. So when there are stressors, you have an increase in your response, right? So it's like stimulating, and then you hit the resistant phase, and then it's going down. You also can compare it with your blood sugar. Sometimes you eat something, sugar goes up, and then it rapidly sinks down. And here the stress is like going into exhaustion phase, and then recovers again. And this exhaustion phase is this distress, so the negative thing. We don't want to have too much. And with plant adaptogens, you can train your system to react more, so to mitigate this this reaction. So it's more like an oestress. This means you train the plant adaptogens are working like mild stressors, training the body to react to stress better when you have real stress, so that you then are prepared. So this means that the stimulation phase, the resistance phase is enhanced, so that's lowering down the response, and also that the exhaustion is not really hit, so it makes the exhaustion phase smaller, and then you also recover way better than without this adaptogens, which is really nice. So it helps you to adapt to stress, and it does not mean that we eliminate stress. It's more like we help you to, so the adaptogens help you to accept the stress better. So there are a lot of adaptogens, a lot of plants. This is a list of well-researched plant extracts, mostly as extracts, to be fair. It's not the powder or the plant you eat, so it's really an extract with high a part of the bioactive components. And I want to show you 5 of them, which we also use in our products and which are well researched. So one of this is ashwagandha. It's one of my favorite, and I think of this 5 also the most important one if you want to try something in the evening to lower your stress, because it lowers the cortisol. And so the stress response. It also helps you to calm down and improve the sleep quality and the energy in the mitochondria, so the ATP production. And it helps your brain function by protecting your nerves. And also it balances the hormones, the testosterone, for instance, and the estrogen. So ashwagandha is really nice. We also have it in our recharge, because after sport, when your stress level is really high after sport, that's why it's good to drink it or to consume it after sport. Then we have rhodiola rosea and cordyceps. You can, of course, take them also as single supplement, but as blend, they support the recovery and reduce fatigue. And I mean, we have it now in the mood capsules, but if you like feeling low in winter, you have low energy, and then you also have low mood. And it's not always connected, but because the stress affects our serotonin, it's a combination. So it helps you to also, again, increase mitochondrial efficiency and to balance your serotonin and dopamine. So this is your energy and mood booster. And then we have the bacopa and the ginseng, which it's more, I think most of you know ginseng for your brain, maybe also for bacopa. So it's more the cognitive protection and the protection for neurodegeneration. And it also reduces stress and boosts resilience. I had a time when I started at BRAINEFFECT, I wanted to, so we were in this big office, it was so noisy. The noise cancelling was not that good, so I didn't have that. So I was really stressed by these noises, and I took this for 2 weeks, and I was really focused. It really helped me. I was amazed by that, because I didn't know that this is so effective. But it's always good to make your own experience. So I'm already at the end. Sorry, maybe I'm a bit too fast. So what do I want to take with you? So chronic stress can damage your DNA. It's not good for your energy. Your energy supply, not to receive energy, and it's also not good for your brain. So try to start with calming down and don't give too much, but also train your stress resilience if you are able to, of course, because it can help you to react better to stress. And adaptogens are a science-backed tool you can use. I mean, there is a lot of research, and still there's so much to explore as there are some effects where they still don't know what really happened in the body. So we always have to be careful, especially if there are some health conditions and if you take medications. It's always good to consult healthcare before you take these plant components, because in the end it could be also a little bit like pharmaceutical products and could interact with the medication. So here are some combinations you could try for if you have specific goals. So for stress resilience and stress reduction, like I said, ashwagandha first, but you could also use rhodiola or Rosenwurz, if you know this in a German name, which is really effectful. And then if you're more like cognitive function and memory, you want to enhance, then you can combine bacopa and ginseng. And for more energy in your life, you can combine cordyceps and rhodiola. So this is what I wanted to show you, and I'm open for your questions.
Thank you, Julia. Just stay. Let's take first your questions. Somebody has questions, Julia? Okay, who is more? Okay, the lady was first.
I just have a question. How often, how long do we have to take the supplements?
So the question, just will repeat.
Yeah,
for people. So how often and how long you should take the supplements? Which to see the effect?
Yeah, so I can also show you here a little overview. So you have to take a specific amount. You also have to check on the supplements the active component in the amount, because otherwise it does not work properly. But yeah, mostly you have to take it longer, especially the bacopa is more long-term, 12 weeks to really be helpful. But the ashwagandha, you can, some people already feel it with one dosage, but the studies are always for like really taking it every day for weeks. And often it is recommended to have a break in between, because, for instance, for rhodiola, it is known that the body can adapt a little bit, and that it doesn't, that the effect is then brought down. So yeah, you like take it for 1 month to 3 months and then have a break again.
Adapt to adaptogens.
Yes, but it's not for everyone known, but yeah, for some.
Is it the same for the ashwagandha then?
For the ashwagandha, it's not that I know of, but I cannot promise. Yeah, I'm really sure.
Thank you. Second question, please.
I'm curious, like, to ask the doctor or PhD as well, like, how's the balancing working, for instance, like with testosterone? How does the plant know like to adapt right for female body and male body?
How does the plant that know?
Yeah, the men naturally have like 10, 15 times higher testosterone than women. So how, when we take the same amount, so what happens? How does it happen?
Yeah, I think this is also something where they do not know why it's different. So what needs to be more researched on, but it's, I mean, ashwagandha is also more known for men. They often use it because of this testosterone effect, but there is not really a side effect known for women. So
Women also secrete testosterone, just
Yeah,
much
that's-
smaller.
Yeah,
That's
no,
true,
just
but
like,
it's not
no,
that-
it's the effect.
I mean, there is like a homeostasis. It's not like it's doing the opposite or it's doing too much. So maybe that's the answer. But I mean, I did have a PhD, but I didn't study this in this detail. I did more intestinal barrier. And so if you have questions for that, I can answer maybe more specific.
Other question? Sorry, you?
I'd like to know more about the studies behind it. Are there like large studies or vivo studies?
Yeah, there are large studies, vivo studies, but of course, a lot of the mechanisms are more on animal studies or even cell studies. So it's a combination of these studies. So I cannot promise that all effects were in humans. The mechanism are most likely also animals. Yeah.
Thank you.
So are these healing or is just a temporary period of use? What happens when I stop it? So I use like 3 months of stress and then I stop. And then that's my stress is coming back, or just
Yeah, it depends. So hopefully it helped you to adapt also your behavior or something, so that you took like a break, so that it's coming not that hard back. But if you keep the life you had before, of course it will come back. So there are some things more last, so neuroprotection is last longer. So there's different levels, what lasts and what does not last. Yeah, but I don't know in detail. I have to check. I just read it before. So it depends on what you want. So some effects can prolong after your intake.
Thank you. We had, raise your hands, people. There was behind, Mama? No, it was you. It was you.
Okay. I had two questions. One is related to this question. So are all the supplements based on plants?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the second question is, how addictive can they be?
How what?
How
Addictive.
How
How addictive?
So I keep on using it all the time to
I mean,
keep
yeah.
that practice?
So we should be still careful taking plants. That's true. Addictive. I cannot say. I mean, I took it. I was not addictive. But when I took mood, for instance, but it was more with the 5-HTP, which was in it. I was really sad that I didn't took it, so I stopped using that. But with the plant components, I didn't have that addiction. No.
Okay, guys, this section of questions is finished. So if you have some questions, maybe you will catch Julia and she will be here around.
Yeah.
Florian, please, can you come?
Sure.
I will start. I have a question to Florian. So you said that you have this 3 buckets of people, 20%, like people who really do already stuff, people who
Struggle in the middle.
and so 60%. So from your experience, what really helps these 2 groups of people really start doing something? What they are missing? Have you seen people starting doing it from these 2 groups, and what was it?
From the red and from the yellow group?
Yeah, what is the reason? So what do they do?
Well, the first thing is bringing an objective into where are they right now. I think the testing is absolutely crucial. I mean, we've been doing this really for a long time. I'm a fan of taking supplements, especially if it's plant-based and if they help, but you need to know why. So if you know the root mechanism of upregulation and downregulation, it doesn't matter what, then you can targetedly take things. And the testing allows the people to understand why they feel the way they feel, why they act the way they act, and why they feel exactly this way. And by bringing the neurobiological equilibrium back, this is where people gain all the things that they were lagging, neither energy, change of mood, stability, and that is where things in behavioral change are able to take place.
So measuring the cortisol or going through the questionnaire and
Well,
see the result. This
ideally,
is
ideally you measure biopsychosocial, because then you understand really what is the problem. We have people totally normal in neurobiological testing, but if they look into sleep or regeneration hygiene, totally off. So you need to understand they have different qualities, all these testings. That's why we have gathered the tests, not because we love to test. We have gathered them because they give us a clear information about the system. What I was saying is we do the testing because we can do something about it to bring people into change mode. And change mode means they can become self-effective. Now, the question you were just asking is, what happens if I stop taking the supplements? We don't want people to take supplements as a doping, because then you can continue with your life. We have people with high cortisol levels. We say take rhodiola because we have seen the best effects on lowering cortisol. But at the same time, I tell them, listen, if you don't go into self change or into behavioral change mode, this will never work out. But changing, if you have high cortisol levels with low levels, it doesn't work. You're an autopilot. You will always come back to where you've been before. So that is really crucial. That's why biology is the game changer. It's the absolute game changer. There's so many people, they know that we should relax. We know we should sleep better, but it just doesn't work. Or if you're angry, you freak out because of nothing. Have you experienced that? There's little things and you freak out. And you ask yourself, why? What's happening? And that is just something you want to stop. You say, no, I'm not going to angry today. I'm not going to be angry. And then there's a little stimulus, a key stimulus, as we call it, something you really don't like. And then it's just, bam, it just goes on autopilot. Or the chocolate on the table. My daughter knows that. There's a chocolate on the table. I keep on saying, I don't eat chocolate today. I don't eat chocolate today. And then it's this moment where I'm just weak. And I was like, okay, I eat it. Shit.
Can we just say, so it's just a trigger to start the change, like the supplements, and then when we have a healthier.
I would love to say that. I mean, there is supplements you should really take because they, over a long period of time, because they really support longevity. There's 3, 4, 5 that are really evident you should take it. A lot of others you take in acute situations, but what I love is this self-efficacy. Why would you be dependent on taking things? In a certain period of time, yes, and that comes again later on if you have a family, if you get older, there's other complaints, then it's okay, but not, like, okay, I can keep on going because I take things. Then you can like take any other hard drugs, right, to maintain your life speed or whatever. So I love this kind of attitude of, okay, I have supported myself, but now I get slowly rid of it because I have made reasonable changes that allow myself to be resilient in life.
Take another question.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. It's very inspiring.
Thank you.
My question is, when you talk about well-being, it's not just individual well-being, it's societal well-being, it's a collective well-being. And nowadays, what we see in the society, among the countries, all the things that's happening, there is no certainty, and everybody is kind of stressed and anxious, even to go out, and nobody knows what's going to happen. So how do you regulate that? How do you kind of make a balance between the outside world and the inside world? Like, if you can explain.
It's a lovely thought, but you know what? Life has been always insecure. We had grandparents in the war. There were a few thousand years ago, people were living out in the woods. You've never known at night if you may fall asleep. That's why, by the way, we have sleeping disorders, because that is just a mechanism of survival. If you're anxious, for example, that you stay awake when you're anxious, right? You cannot fall asleep. So the thing is that uncertainty, 90%, that's not scientific, but that is well known, 90% of what insecurity makes in our mind is not real. If you write it down, and there's a lot of science from the journaling or from people being severely depressed, if there's things you write down, the things you think, and you read it afterwards, a week later or a month later, most of the things never happen. So insecurity is a construction of neurobiological change, because you have a tendency of seeing things rather negative or in a threat. It is your biography, it is the things you have learned, the things you have experienced. That's also why the extinction, for example, if you have trauma or if you have negative life events, we need cortisol, by the way, for this extinction, for deleting these things from our patterns. So all what I've been showing to you is actually kind of leading into knowing our bias, knowing where we come from, knowing our biography. And there's a lot of people, I have met people with tremendous life experiences in all kinds of ways. And at the end, it's not a guarantee that you're unhappy or that you're happy. It's about what you do against it or what you do for yourself. And one thing that we know from neuroscience is you can always rewire the brain. Rewiring the brain means we are what we think. So the more you train your brain in a rather positive, realistic perspective, the more you see the world like that. So that allows you, with being in equilibrium and not with major kind of imbalances, that allows you, that comes from resilience research that was made, in 9/11, they made a lot of research, for example, that allows you that even if you've undergone significant things, or the war, people that are living in wars right now, no matter where on this planet, there's some people that can handle it quite well, but that's the ones that always allowed to kind of disconnect from the things that happen outside. The more you are into it, that's also why some people no longer look into television or look into news, because it always trigger kind of this perspective in it. And we know that some people are, we know this also from sibling research, you know, they have actually exactly the same kind of genetics, they have exactly more or less the same biographical path, but one is like that and the other one is like this. And that is more the behavioral side of it. So if biology is well balanced, it's about allowing yourself to disconnect from the things that cause threat to you. The threat is up here. It's luckily mostly it's not a real threat. For some people it is, but that's.
I would like to add. We'll take a few more questions, and then we'll start our networking session. I have to add on it because I have my personal take, strong take on it. It's a secret, but I have training in psychology, and cognitive behavioral therapy actually so well works with anxiety, because the way how we feel emotions, they come from the way we think. And boy, oh boy, if we all think, live the idea that the way how I think, this is how the other people think. So we have very different constructs, coping mechanism, scenarios in our lives. And CBT really helps to identify those patterns, see how they impact you negatively, somewhere they impact you positively. And really, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, my recommendation, if you will, willing to take one. We have lots of questions. I think Florian stays for some little.
I answer any question that is there. I love to answer questions.
So let's do it more informal way, if you don't mind. With this, I would like to say thank you guys. It's always amazing the atmosphere people bring here. John, thanks a lot for the venue. Yulia for your talk, Florian for your, and with this, some water, some hydration drink. And
this is recharge with ashwagandha.
We will all stay here tonight, all relaxed.
So thank you, and let's give a final.
We did answer the questions, if you don't mind. If you want to leave, you can leave, but it will be easy though. Yeah.
So my question is, how effective are these adaptogens, and where are they actually studied in relation to bringing that process of having that good basis to support stress lowering and that rewiring that you were talking about? And also how effective, how can that be implemented in an accessible way in the population?
Well, the testing is pretty simple, so people can easily test that and see where they are. Now, the adaptogens, well, we work with monosubstances. I love the monosubstances because the precursors allow, like serotonin, you mentioned 5-HTP, by the way, which is also a plant, it's Stephonia, and it's all